Hi, my name's Jodie and welcome back to another video. So today I have a very exciting video and that is a witchy book recs video. So I'm going to talk about some books I have read that feature witches that are just some of my favourite, that if you're looking for a witchy read should scratch that itch and are perfect for your autumn TBRs. I love all of these books and I just love anything with witches. I have so many books on my shelf that are about witches that I still haven't read yet. So I could do a video on those as well if you wanted like a witchy book recs part 2 of just books that are on my TBR, because I have an entire shelf full of books that feature witches. So let me know if you'll be interested in that. But today I'm going to talk about the books that I have read and I'm really excited. I hope you guys do enjoy this video and I hope you find some books to add to your TBR. So I'm going to get straight into it. So the first book is The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This is one of my favourite witchy books, if not my favourite one. I honestly adore this book so much. The small town in this book has the same vibe as Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls, and I honestly love that. Like if you took Stars Hollow but make it magical, you would get the town in this book. I love the town in this book. It just sounds so cozy. I want to live there and I want to visit all of the stores in this book because they just sound so like whimsical, and yeah, I just love the setting of this book so much. So essentially we are following a Vivian and she is a witch. She meets this guy called Reese who comes from the family who are the founders of the town that she lives in, and they embark on this romance. But then she finds out he actually has a fiance back home and he forgot to tell her this, and obviously they break up. And then we follow her 9 years later. She never really quite got over it and she drunkenly put a hex on him one night, not realising that it actually worked. And now there are lots of problems. He comes back to this town all those years later and, put it this way, she's not very happy to see him, but things are happening in her town and it seems to be linked to the hex she has put on her ex, Reese, and he is back to like do some founder things with the ley lines that are in this town. I think that's what they were called. And yeah, basically everything's going wrong because of her. So they have to team up together to try and like undo this hex. And obviously they kind of start to fall for one another again. He gets a chance to explain himself and what actually happened. So this is like a second chance romance and it has small town vibes, obviously witchy vibes. There is magic in here and the magic system is really cool. There's like ley lines and things. I think there's like a little bit of Welsh mythology in here. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there is a little bit of Welsh mythology. And we also have a talking cat. And when I tell you, this cat is hilarious. Like I would die for this cat. I think his name's Sir Percival and he's just so funny. But yeah, this has lots of banter. It is really funny and it is just like a witchy rom-com essentially. So I would highly recommend this book. It is just so good and I love it so much. So next we have 2 books by Rachel Griffin, and that is The Nature of Witches and Wild as the Witch. Now firstly, both of these covers are absolutely stunning. Like, can we just appreciate the covers? But I love both of these books. I don't know if you can tell by all the tabs that are in here. I do have 2 spoiler filled reading vlogs for these books over on my Patreon if you are interested, and me and my patrons are currently reading Rachel Griffin's latest release, Bring Me Your Midnight. So if you wanted to join us in reading that, we are reading it through September and October, and I will be filming a spoiler filled vlog. There is also a Discord for it, so if you are interested you can head to my Patreon. But back to these 2. I really enjoyed both of these books. Now The Nature of Witches is my favourite Rachel Griffin's and I think this is one of the best witchy books there is. The way this is written is incredible, quite frankly. Like I just love it so much. Both of these books are YA fantasy with romance, and I will get into The Nature of Witches first because it is my favourite. So my memory card got full, but back to what I was saying. So in The Nature of Witches we are following Clara, and essentially in this world magic exists and humans are aware of witches, and essentially witches' magic is tied to the season. So each witch has a specific affinity for a specific season, and with that comes a specific power. So they are responsible for kind of like looking after the climate of the earth and keeping things going smoothly. But obviously climate change is rapidly accelerating due to humans, and they are struggling to keep control of things, and like natural disasters are happening. And we have Clara, who is a rare witch because she has the power of all 4 seasons, which is unheard of. So everyone is kind of relying on her to basically like save the world. But Clara has a lot of trauma from her past, and as a result she is struggling to control her magic, to want to use her magic. And yeah, we're basically following her kind of going through these like trials and tribulations of figuring out who she is, overcoming her past trauma, and learning to like love who she is, accept who she is, and her magic. And it's just really heartwarming. I really love the character growth in this book. We also do have a romance which is just super adorable, and the magic itself in here is so good, because if magic were to exist in the real world, I would 100% believe it would be like this book. Like, it feels real. Like, the way this is written, the way it is told feels so real, and I love it. And I love the kind of like climate change activism that's subtly going on in the background of this book. It's just really clever. And in both of these, Rachel Griffin's writing is just so beautiful. It's very lyrical, descriptive, atmospheric, and I love it so much. And then in Wild as the Witch, you follow Iris, and this one is set in like more of like a foresty kind of setting, and this one has sort of like a forbidden romance. This is one where like witches are kind of known in the world, but not necessarily liked by a lot of people. And we basically follow Iris and Pike, who have to work together to capture this owl, but Pike doesn't realise that like this owl is like has some kind of magic or a curse, from what I remember, that Iris accidentally did in a moment of anger, and like as a result I think it could kill Pike, but he doesn't know that. So they've been tracking this owl down together for different reasons, and it's just a really good story. The atmosphere and the kind of overall vibe is just really good. I love the owl, like the use of the owl in this book as well, and the romance that ensues as well is just really heartwarming. And we of course have the forced proximity trope in here. It's just a really fun witchy story. I definitely don't think it's as good as The Nature of Witches, but it's still really good. And I would definitely recommend Rachel Griffin's books, especially for autumn. They are just the perfect reads for this time of year, and I really loved both of these books. So next we have one of my all-time favourite books, and that is Hex by Jenny Fagan. This is one of the most powerful like works of literature I have ever read in my entire life. Like, I still think about this book to this day, and I read this when it first published a few years ago, and nothing has ever made me feel so much sorrow as this book did. This is not a light-hearted book. You need to check out the trigger warnings first if you're going to read this, because it's quite horrific in places, and it is loosely based around a true story, which makes it all the more sad. So essentially in this book we follow Galis Duncan on the last night of her life, and our main character is a witch from the present day who goes back in time to spend Galis's last night with her and to basically comfort her through this horrible time. And for those of you who don't know, Galis Duncan was a real person who was killed in the, I think, Scottish witch trials. She was only a girl and she was innocent, and it's a really tragic story. And essentially what this book does is it draws parallels between how women were treated then and how women are still treated now, and how we are still so immensely linked, and even generations later still kind of facing some of the same prejudices and issues. And it is just a very interesting story that really does show you that not a lot has really changed for women now. Like, yes, there are obviously big changes that have happened, but so many things women face then we still face today. And it's really unique the way this is told generations later, and the element of witchcraft and magic in here isn't like the main focus. The main focus is the story of Galis Duncan, and basically she is framed as being a witch simply so a man can get, I think it's his sister-in-law's money, essentially. And it is really horrific. This book is really dark, but it is an incredible read. Like, it will make you feel so much. Like, I have never ever felt so much as I have when reading this book. It is just truly like an incredible book, and like I said, it really does draw upon like a lot of issues, and it also does a good job, I think, of doing justice for Galis Duncan's story, and the historical aspect of it is really well done. The writing is beautiful, and it is just an incredible book. I cannot recommend this enough. Like, I will always recommend this book, I will always talk about it, and I just think it's an incredible book, and yeah, I always think about it. So I would highly recommend this if you're more into the historical fiction, if you're into literary fiction, and just like you are interested in kind of like the witch trials, then you will really enjoy this book. So quite different to the books I talked about, but still definitely worth a read. And I love this book so much. So next we have another book that I also love very much, and that is The Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This one I read a few years ago. I still haven't finished the series, unfortunately, but I loved this book. This was such a good book. Is it insta-lovey? Definitely, but it is just so fun if you appreciate it for what it is, and you understand that in this world that's kind of how romance would work with a vampire. So basically we are following Diana Bishop, who is a witch. She works and studies in Oxford, so the Oxford setting is truly just, oh, the academic setting, I love it so much. The Bodleian Library is in here, and I love the setting so much. And also Diana Bishop loves tea, and she talks about tea a lot, so that also makes me very happy. But anyway, Diana Bishop is living at Oxford and she is studying. She studies alchemy and like the history of it, and she is writing some kind of paper or something, and she goes into the Bodleian Library and she calls up this manuscript. It's like something 222 it's called, I can't remember the exact title, but she pulls up this manuscript that has actually been lost for a long time, that many supernatural creatures have been searching for, and she's able to call it up, and suddenly everyone is looking for her. I want to get their hands on this manuscript because it basically contains the origins of like life, of how vampires were created and all of that. And essentially at the moment vampires are kind of dying out, so our vampire main character in here, Matthew, is seeking this manuscript in order to try and save his kind, essentially. And they end up crossing paths, a romance ensues, and lots of bad people are now after her and want this manuscript. So yeah, the witchiness in this book is top tier. It is so good. Diana has to overcome a lot of obstacles because she does not use her magic. She does not like her witch heritage, so she has to come to terms with that. There's the romance, and there's a lot more going on in the story. I don't want to give any spoilers, but if you like witches, if you like vampires, if you like the academia setting, if you like a character that loves academia, and you love all those things combined, then definitely read this book. I loved it so much, and I actually read this by doing the real-time read-along, so I'm pretty sure it's already started or might even be over by the time this video goes up. But essentially the author hosts this every single year. I think you can find it on Facebook, and you can read along in real time. So like in here there's I think it starts on like a specific date in September, and then you read like whatever chapter it is that's actually that day. So say the first chapter takes place on September 1st, you would read like chapter 1 and whatever other chapters are set on September 1st in the book. So it's really fun to read it like that and get immersed in the story and the world a bit more. So I would highly recommend doing that if you can participate in that at some point. But I love this book so much. It was such a fun time, and just one of the best witchy stories I have ever read, and I love the romance in this book as well. Also, if you haven't watched a TV show, would also highly recommend that, but I couldn't not include this in this video. So next is a book I actually read earlier this year, and that is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli. This is also called Heartless Hunter in the US. I really enjoyed this book. I was pleasantly surprised by it. This is a YA fantasy with forbidden romance. It's also enemies to lovers and a game of cat and mouse between a witch and a witch hunter. So I feel like I don't really need to say much more than that to get you enticed to read this book, but I will say a little bit more. So essentially in this book we follow Rune, and by day she's a vapid socialite who does not like witches, and by night she is the Crimson Moth, who is a vigilante witch saving other witches. So she has been able to go undetected as a witch. Where she lives, witches are hunted and killed, and she is doing her best to survive as a witch and stay hidden, keep her identity a secret by playing this vapid socialite that kind of, you know, is dumb and hates witches, but she secretly, you know, saves witches. And she is trying to save this witch one day, and she ends up crossing paths with Gideon, who's the best witch hunter of them all, and he is now hunting down the Crimson Moth, and she ends up trying to court him to learn information about the location of this witch she's trying to save. He tries to court her in order to figure out if she is the Crimson Moth. So they're both playing a very dangerous game with one another whilst also falling in love at the same time. There are lots of other tropes in this book, and it also made me cry a lot. So be warned, you probably will cry. But I loved this. It was so good. The game of cat and mouse was so entertaining to read. The romance, the world, and the magic is very unique in here because it's tied to blood. So it's really interesting seeing our main character get around certain things to do with magic in this book. I don't want to say anything without giving spoilers, but if you've read it, you know what I mean. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book and I definitely recommend it. I think the sequel comes out early next year and I cannot wait for it. But I would highly recommend this book. This is such a fun witchy read and I loved it so much. Okay, so this next one is a super popular one and the main character is a witch. We also have a romance with a prince of hell. So that is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. I love this book. Now, I read the second one and I can't quite remember a lot of what happened. I read this when it first came out, so it's been a while, but I haven't read the third book yet, so I do need to do a reread. But our main character is a witch. She summons a prince of hell. They have to work together to try and figure out who murdered her sister, and that's kind of the general plot of this book. I can't remember too much, but I know that I loved it. I gave it 5 stars and I was swooning. I binged it and I binged the second one and I really enjoyed it. I loved their dynamic. There's very much forced proximity in here and kind of enemies to lovers, and it was just a really fun time. I loved the kind of murder mystery that's woven into here as well. And it is just a really fun time. I love Kerri Maniscalco's writing, so I figured I would include this in here because our main character is a witch. There are some witchy things that happen in here, but the witchiness isn't the focus of this book. It's pretty much like the mystery and the romance, but I did really like our main character and I did definitely want to recommend this book because it is just so good. Okay, so this next one is a little bit of a throwback and that is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Horan. This one I read in lockdown, so a few years ago, probably like 4 years ago now, but I loved it. This was such a good book. This is very much like Crimson Moth in terms of it's a game of cat and mouse between a witch and a witch hunter, and there's marriage of convenience in here, forced proximity, and lots of banter, lots of tension. It is hilarious. Like, it's not often I read a young adult book and I find the main character truly funny, but this book had me laughing out loud. The romance had me swooning. It had me on the edge of my seat of whether or not the main character would be caught, and I loved it. So yeah, essentially our main character is a witch in hiding. She ends up marrying a witch hunter and that's all I can remember because it has been a while, but I feel like that's kind of all you need to know. It's a really fun time. There's a war going on between witches and these like witch hunters and she's kind of caught in the middle of it. So yeah, I love this. It was so fun. I never continued this series and I don't know why, so I do want to reread this one also because I loved it. I gave it 5 stars and I thought it was such a fun time. So yeah, I did just want to recommend this one again because it was a fun time. So that does conclude my witchy book recs video. Please do let me know if you would like to see another witchy book recs video of just general witchy books that I have but haven't read yet, because I have a lot of them and I kind of do want to share them with you guys. I feel like you'll be able to find like so many more books, but these are just some of my favourite books that do feature witches. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books or if you're planning to read them. I would love to know and chat to you guys in the comments about them. If you have any witchy book recs, please do feel free to leave those below. I'm always on the hunt for more witchy books. I just love anything to do with witches. And if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up, and I will link anything I have mentioned in the description box down below, along with the link to my Patreon, and that's where you'll find extra content from me. You will find hauls, you will find reading vlogs, you'll find bi-monthly book clubs, a monthly readathon, a Discord, and lots of other things. It's all happening over on my Patreon, so I will have that linked down below along with the links to all my social medias. But yes, I hope you're all safe and well. I hope you're reading lots of good spooky books, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!